You don't have to do that.
Okay.
Mic check 1 2.
I don't want to look like
Mic
a
check.
chick.
All right. Hi guys, welcome to episode 6 of the Second String Debate Team podcast. It's me, Javin.
Alex is here.
This is my lifelong friend, Ben. Honestly, there's reason that Ben is here is if you guys watched the last episode, it all stemmed from the squishy spot in my floor, which is still right over there. I think it was caused by ghosts. That has been what I have determined thus far. And I was talking to Ben last weekend. I came over to his place. We were having a couple beers, and we had got to talking about the squishy spot and the sleep paralysis and some of the stuff that we had talked about on the last episode. And just by a weird kind of happenstance, even before Ben had listened to the episode, he had started to describe some of the things in terms of sleep paralysis that he had seen that we had discussed. So I just found that a little too coincidental to ignore. And I kind of told Ben how much knowledge CJ has in this respect. And I figured they could probably have Peaches have a pretty conducive conversation.
Yeah. So I'm Ben. Hey, everybody. So Javin came over to my house. We were drinking, and I knew that the podcast came out and sleep paralysis was the topic of discussion. And so I asked him a quick question. I was like, where's the line between sleep paralysis and paranormal activity? And so that's kind of how we got into our conversation of what I experienced. And honestly, the expression on his face when I was explaining what I saw, it was priceless because I could tell he was a little shocked because kind of what I was saying is what you guys were talking about. And so that's kind of where he dove into Peach's explanation of the 3 recurring entities or figures. And so that's where we got into this discussion.
Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us, because we were talking a little bit before we started recording about like what it was that you actually saw, and like what was that point that made it creepy for you where you were like, no, we definitely need to come back on this podcast and rehash this again?
Yeah. Well, one, the creepy part is, one, you guys just had a podcast about it, and then I experienced it, and this was before me watching it, so it was just kind of like too perfect, I guess. And this was also my first ever experience of sleep paralysis. I'm 24 now, and so went my whole life without having to worry about this type of stuff. So it was definitely shocking, to say the least, to experience it for your first time at an age where you can understand and comprehend a little better. So, I was sleeping in my bed, of course, and I was on the edge of it looking out into my room versus like the wall. And I woke up laying there, and it was dark, of course, but I had my windows open, so there was some light coming in through, the night sky and whatnot. And in my room, standing right next to my bed, was a dark figure, right? And that dark figure had a hat that was brim-like. And at first, when I did see it and tried to understand what it was, it did somewhat look like a figure that was a woman in a dress with a old-time, hat that they would wear with a brim. And so that's kind of what I was thinking it was, and I was terrified when seeing it. It was very dark, but the silhouette was there, and I could see the figure, almost like a shadow that was 3D, as Peaches and I were talking earlier. And most scary thing I've ever experienced in my life, it felt like I was going to die just because of what I was seeing. And all I really wanted to do was just put the blankets over my face just so I could stop seeing it, but I couldn't move. So it was... So it kind of threw you back into like childhood almost. Correct, yeah. I felt like a scared child, which is terrible to say it, but it really felt that way.
Hey, don't feel bad. I mean, if I start thinking about aliens at 3 o'clock in the morning, those covers come up over my face too.
I feel that.
Well, and what I found really interesting is when Ben was describing this all to me, he at first, like, he told me, like, I had this fucked up dream, is how he had first said it. And then, like, as he was describing to me what was happening, I was like, was it like a dream, or were you more like there? And he was like, no, I was there. And that's when like I started to like make the connections between the the figure he had seen and kind of what you had talked about. And that's when I started to like ask more questions and kind of figure like, oh, like it's just so crazy that he had experienced this. So like, I mean, days after I had this conversation with you guys.
Right.
So, and what's crazy is in my head, from what I saw, I thought it was a woman in a black dress with a hat, right? And so that's when he explained to me about the 3 reoccurring figures. And so we started Googling the kind of pictures of what they may look like. He showed me the cat-like thing, and I was like, that's cool. And he showed me the woman that is reoccurring, and it looked nothing like the woman that I saw, right? So I was like, maybe I'm not seeing the same thing as what you guys are talking about. Then we looked up the man in the hat, and as soon as he showed me that picture, my heart dropped, goosebumps all over, and it was exactly what I saw. And so in the picture I saw, it was literally a dark figure, and he was pretty tall, and he had the brim hat all around. And that brim hat was so distinctive, and it was just terrifying to see as soon as I saw it. So that's when I knew. I was like, that's it right there. So
yeah, and that's what was so surreal is like it was like, I just turned the phone around, showed him that, and I could tell like he was like, get that away from me.
Yeah,
like
bro.
I don't, and it was just so surreal. And also I had a similar experience when I started talking to Ilse also about this. I guess you could introduce who Ilse is.
So Ilse is my son's mother, and she was there that night as well, hanging out. And so she's had a lot of experiences, awake and asleep, with paranormal or sleep paralysis, I guess you could say. And we were talking about one time she was awake with all the kids, and all the kids and her saw the same exact thing. And what it was that she explained was a dark figure that you couldn't tell anything on him other than his figure. And then other than that, you saw his bright eyes and his smile. And he looked up a picture. Yeah, and he looked up a picture.
Smile. We're talking big smile.
Yeah, she was
big.
She had said almost like a Cheshire cat.
Jace's demon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so she's seen him multiple times, and the kids, which range from 3 to 9 years old, have all seen him as well, all on the same day. And
this figure doesn't wear a hat.
Nope. He's almost like, it's just a black, like almost like he's bald, I guess you could say, but it's just straight dark. And he looked up a picture, showed her, same reaction, like, get that, like, that's it. That's the one. Like, that's exactly what I've seen.
When you looked up that picture, did it say that this man is normally accompanied by or an accomplice to the man in the hat?
We didn't look that deep into it.
I didn't. No, we didn't. Yeah,
we just looked at the picture on Google Image.
They told them to get it away from them. Obviously, they didn't continue reading.
Like,
But Gavin was the one looking it up, so it's like, anyways.
We're a
No,
little
what I mean
intoxicated.
by that is a lot of people have experienced this with the red eyes, the big smile.
Yep.
A lot of times, sometimes it's just the eyes, sometimes it's just the smile, but at the end of the day, there's still that common theme. And it's funny because this man is normally followed or accompany, if you will, the man in the hat, maybe with another figure very similar to him, or he comes after like an episode with the man in the hat most of the time.
Wow.
So the two are like related to each other, but like most would describe the man in the hat as basically being like the leader of everything that's happening.
So what happened first? Was it? Did you see the man in the hat first?
So no, she's been experiencing
did
that
the
man.
figure come first?
Yeah, she's been experiencing that man for a while now, whether it's asleep or awake, and so have the kids. Her and the kids moved in with me, and I didn't see the man in the hat until she moved in. I didn't experience sleep paralysis until she came into my house and started living with me. So she's experienced the other guy with the smile, and I experienced the man in the hat. And she's never seen the man in the hat, and I obviously have never seen the man with the smile. So now that you're saying that they're...
I hate to say it, the smile is probably the worst.
The worst?
Yeah, we all do when you smile.
Anybody who's experienced both will tell you, it's that smile will get you every time.
Bro,
that is scary.
I'm thankful I couldn't see the man in the hat's face because that would have been way scarier. So yeah, I could definitely believe that the smile guy is way worse.
Yeah, it's intense.
Peaches, is he worse because he brings more worse omens, or is it just worse because it's scarier looking?
If you were to ask me, it's just because he's scary. It's really unique. So it's movies have tried, pictures have gotten pretty close, but I've never seen a very accurate depiction of what it looks like when any of these entities are appearing to you, right? When you have the man with the eyes with the smile, I mean, you can picture it in your mind. Picture a 3D shadow.
Yeah.
But that it doesn't move, and it just stares at you. And you can tell that it's staring at you whether you see the eyes or not. And then picture almost like the Cheshire cat, where that big smile with teeth clenched like this, just smiling at you. And it doesn't do anything. It will sit there and smile at you. Sometimes he's not even standing up. He's crawling to you, peering at you through something.
Ooh.
I had a lady talk to me one time about how he was crouched, like knees to elbows crouched from her closet staring at her. I had somebody else tell me that it was through like a mesh screening that was like meant to be like a gate that they had in their room. And he was just peering through that, and you could see like the hands curling the fencing. And he never actually went beyond that, though. You could just see the smile behind it, and it's so ominous and threatening in nature to me. I don't know if it holds anything more than it's just scary as hell.
Yeah.
So Peaches, do you think that this is kind of like, could potentially be where Slender Man kind of came from? Do you think it's something like this?
That's
do
such
you
a
think
good
that's
question.
something completely different?
Without going on too much of a tangent, can you guys give me a rundown on? I don't know much on the Slender Man.
Just know he's a video
It's
game.
just a shadow creature that's a really tall.
Slender Man is a creepypasta that was developed. I forget his name.
But wasn't
it was
there
like back in 2006 or something? He wrote a story about Slender Man.
Well, and wasn't
and he claims to this day that he made the story.
okay?
Okay.
But wasn't
But I
there?
just meant in terms of like the way
I'm actually going to look that up before I bring that up.
look like the way.
I could be wrong on a few dates. I don't know if he had an inspiration.
Just in general, I mean, like how Slender Man, that myth may be perpetuated, or something similar to that. Do you think it's derived from these types of, common sights that a lot of people are having?
Yeah, I mean, outside of sleep paralysis, shadow figures are well known throughout history. Every culture has been able to experience some sort of shadow figure phenomenon, and when you talk about these sleep paralysis episodes, they are shadow people, but there's something entirely unique to just that sleep paralysis episode. Shadow people can be around anywhere. If you want to look up a really, really good idea of what a shadow person is and what they're capable of, go look up, it's a YouTube channel called The Ghost of Carmel, Maine. He experiences a lot of paranormal activity in a very old house that he bought. And it's kind of silly, but the guy, he calls him Shadow Dude because he sees him so often. Mm-hmm. And they're some of the most convincing full body apparition of a shadow person, not just like a glimpse of a shadow person looking, beyond the corner. If you want to get more into something that might be a little more believable, another good YouTube channel is Nuke's Top 5.
Oh, we watched
He does
that.
a lot of top 5s on, Ben knows. He does a lot of top 5s on paranormal events, but what I appreciate about him is I don't like, top 5, top 10 formats because what you're doing is condensing a really large story into something that doesn't give you a lot of information. He limits it mostly to a top 5, and his videos typically can run, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, they can run from like the 12 to 20 plus minute mark.
Oh, yeah, they're pretty long.
Really? Yeah, he gives a lot of good detailed explanation into what's going on, but also does a pretty good job of remaining objective, right? It could be a hoax, you ultimately have to decide. Ben, you should know of the Ghost of Carmel name because he's been featured a lot on Nuke's Top 5.
Yeah, and actually, so I watched a recent one, and this one had to be the most scary one that I've seen on that Nuke's Top 5 is because what they were showing was it was a group of people that were investigating this, abandoned place, right? And they were live on YouTube, and you can see all the YouTube comments coming in live, and so everything was live. And in this house, there's this door that kept shutting, and it kept shutting. They would open it, they would show nobody's behind it, there's no wires, they went all through it, it would shut. Anytime they told it to, basically, it would shut. And then they're like, can you open the door? That door was shut all the way, opened.
I know what you're talking about, and it was like a door you had to push.
Oh, it was like a metal door.
You would push it in.
It's a metal door.
Yes, I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
I was like, okay,
one
that's
of the
creepy.
most convincing paranormal videos I've ever seen. That one.
That one's trippy,
really
especially
great.
it being live on YouTube. Like there's no way you can
Right.
edit
How
that.
do you fake that? Dude?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, Ben, I'm just curious. What part of the town do you live in?
What part of the house you said?
No, town.
Oh,
Like,
town.
what part
Oh,
of the street? Yeah.
I was
In-
like,
in my
upstairs?
bedroom?
No, yeah, I live on the west side-ish, Garden of the Gods, I-25 area.
Is that, because we talked about this too, where I had a lot of experience in kind of that same area. I used to live in the same neighborhood Peaches does now. And so I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are in like certain areas being kind of paranormal, because that side of town is the only place really, other than one other location, that I've experienced paranormal
No,
activity.
so I grew up in a similar area to where Ben lives now. I actually spent a lot of time over in that area, and we had a house. I think when I was in middle school, I was in middle school, and there was a ton of weird shit that happened in that house. Like, the door open, like all the standard shit that happens in houses that makes you go, oh, that's spooky.
Yeah.
But like, it was primarily that house for me. Because we moved a lot when I was a kid, and I can't really remember too many of the other houses I lived in that I ever experienced anything weird. But like, I remember that house, even like my sisters, my mom, everyone besides my dad at one point admitted that basement was like, you just didn't go down there. Like, unless you had to do laundry, there was no reason to go down there. Absolutely.
Or your
no
name
reason.
is Jace.
Yeah, or your name is Jason, you ain't afraid of no ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah, my house, actually, I used to live over off of like Austin Bluffs and Dublin area, and I never experienced any type of paranormal activity over there. But since living in this house, actually, just a quick story that my roommate told Javin last week when he was over was, which is actually kind of very terrifying of a story. So he was taking a shower in our basement, and he heard somebody outside his door yell his name. He said, Logan. And he said, hold on, I'm showering. Let me get ready. And so he gets out of the shower. He starts drying his hair. And while he's drying his hair, he hears again. He says, Logan. And he said, hold on. And he's thinking it's me outside his door, for whatever reason. And when he opens the door, nobody's there. He goes upstairs. I'm not home. Nobody's home. He's home alone. But he clearly heard his name being yelled twice outside of his door, which is...
Well, and I remember asking Logan too when he had told me that. I was like, did you recognize the voice that was speaking to you? And he was like, yes and no. Like, he was like, I knew it wasn't necessarily Ben's voice. He's like, but it wasn't also like such a foreign voice that it spooked me. He was like, literally, that's how he responded. Like, hold on. Like, I'm drying my hair, like the way you would to your roommate.
Exactly. Which
I had a similar experience to that, but it wasn't with voice. It was actually a physical sensation where my ex one time, she was out at the bars downtown. I think I was studying for an exam or something. Mm-hmm. And so I went to bed while she was downtown. And at about 1 o'clock in the morning, I feel this pressure of somebody getting in and laying in bed. And I didn't roll over because I just assumed she had come home. And like 2:30 in the morning, I wake up and I expect to see my girlfriend in the bed, and I look over and there is nobody in that bed and there is nobody home.
I'd have burned that fucking place down.
You just got cuddled by a ghost, dog.
Yeah.
But one thing, and this is what I looked up real quick. This is kind of the reason I had brought up the Slender Man. I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't something I had made up, but there was the Slender Man stabbing that happened back in like 2014, where those girls like stabbed their best friend out in the woods. Kind of going back to what you had brought up, Alex, if Slender Man is possibly a derivative of, these 3-4 major things that people experience with sleep paralysis. Have there ever been any cases where people have claimed insanity, or have used like the demons that they see, or the things they see during sleep paralysis as a motivator for a crime? Like, this being was appearing to me every night and telling me to kill people or telling me to stab.
To some extent, yeah. What was it? What was that serial killer? John Wayne Casey?
Yeah.
There was a serial killer who basically, his defense was, my demon cat told me to kill all these people.
That wasn't John Wayne, whatever, Casey? Is that his last name?
John Wayne Gacy. But
Gacy.
It is, here, let me, serial killer.
It wasn't John Wayne Gacy, it was, but I know who you're talking about. Yeah, there is somebody who did claim that.
Serial killer, demon dog.
Peaches, while they're looking that up, my question for you, since you've experienced sleep paralysis a lot, have any of those figures talked to you verbally at all, or is it all silence?
No. It's all silence with them. I will admit I've had that phenomenon of hearing things, but very seldomly is it anything more than
David
just
Berkowitz.
Yeah, David Berkowitz was the one that said and it was his demon dog that was giving him the orders.
Yeah.
To shoot a bunch of people.
Outside of, your typical name being called, that is often, there has been the phenomenon of noises around the house, like scratching, running, random wind sounding like it's hitting the window. There's those typical things. And the funny thing is it always sort of seems to escalate.
Mm-hmm.
So like the running will start off as like a tap and end up with like full on stomping and running. The weirdest phenomenon for me is the wind sound, like it's hitting something. When there's high strong wind outside the house, you can hear it like bracing the window. I've heard that too, and that to me is probably the most freaky.
That is.
It's like, yeah.
Sorry for the professionalism of the studio. I had to let my dogs out.
For hearing things, one thing I have heard in my house when I was using the bathroom is so I got my kid on the weekends, Saturday and Sundays when my son would be there, and he's 4. I was using the restroom and I hear my son yell out, and I'm like, all right, I'll deal with him once I'm done. I get out of the bathroom to go check on him, and I'm like, wait, it's Tuesday. I don't have my kid today. And so that threw me off. Like, I was like, I completely heard him just yell very clearly. And it sounded like it was coming through the vent as if like he was in the basement for whatever reason, which we never go into the basement. And so I was just like, all right, let me go check on him. And then I'm like, wait, it's Tuesday. He's not here. And so that definitely was one of the scarier things I've experienced, especially because it had to do with my kid.
When did you say that
make my skin
It was a while ago. At least a year ago.
Did you ever experience anything weird in the house, like before, obviously the sleep paralysis was pretty recent, but like, before Logan got there?
No, actually. So all of this actually started once Logan, and then once Ilse moved in. So
Logan, the blame.
I would assume so. It is Logan and Ilse's fault. I was a pure child.
Like, I remain blameless in this.
I had Jesus in my heart protecting me, and they came in and tainted that very, very much so.
Oh my gosh.
Nah, for real. This didn't start till they moved in, and yeah. So I don't know if that had to do with it, or if they just,
It's infectious. I feel like it just sort of follows people's around, and next thing you know about it, so you're never going to stop knowing about it, right?
Yeah, now that I know and aware of these things, I feel like I'm more alert or susceptible to these activities.
Yeah, it kind of opens your mind.
Well, I certainly think that like there's a something that follows my sister around, because all the times that I have experienced anything supernatural in my life,
oldest or middle?
Middle. Almost all of them have been either while I was living with her or in very close proximity.
That makes sense.
And actually, since I've
sense.
stopped living with Bree, I've experienced very, very minimal. I wouldn't even call them like super nap, just kind of like more or less bad dreams than anything else.
Yeah.
I need to bring up a point that just happened.
Oh God!
So,
did you go to the bathroom?
Shadow figure. No. I saw a shadow figure walk by my window, and I heard the door going da 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 da. And I'm like, well, what the fuck? Like, everybody here has a key to get into the house. Like, who's like kind of fumbling with the door? So I go out there. I'm kind of freaked out because of this conversation.
Yeah.
Turned out it's my neighbor looking for vents. So that's why I was gone.
Okay.
There's always a rational explanation for the shadow peoples.
Bro, that had me worried because with my son's mother, one of the times her and the kids saw that shadow man with the face was at the front door. Somebody was trying to get in. The doorknob was shaking, but she looked out the window and nobody was there. And so that's kind of what started this whole series of events for her. And then it ended with seeing that shadow man through the window. So that was very weird that you just said that. So if that was real, I was about to say.
I have another hypothesis too, guys. And I'm just throwing this out there. Does anybody else think it's possible, just slightly possible, that Vince isn't actually a real person? He's a ghost?
That's
my favorite ghost.
Oh, yeah. If Vince is a ghost, bro, he's the best. But I would not disagree with that because I can tell you that in my life, I have physically seen Vince 2 times. Two times. And
he's not a ghost, dude. He's like stayed weeks on end at my house, so he's not a ghost.
Have a ghost
problem. But you have a ghost. You have a ghost problem, bro. You're running a ghost motel. What can I tell you?
Let me call Nuke's top 5.
Me and my ghost were having a good time then.
No. But anyways, so yeah, we had speaking about scary things, which we've been on for a minute here. The reason that we're all recording remotely today is because the world is ending, and the coronavirus has basically shut down everything. Besides liquor stores, those are still popping.
Unfortunately, my roommate's girlfriend works in a hospital that had a case, and so since our next guest, who we will introduce, is a medical professional, we decided it would be in everybody's best interest to not expose her to my stuff.
So now, here we are, doing this like true podcasting millennials.
Hey. Yeah. Perfect. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Pauline. I'm Peaches' wife, but I'm also a registered nurse. Disclaimer, right? So everything that I'm saying today is going to be very informative, and all the information that I've gotten is based on the CDC and Mayo Clinic websites, which are obviously you're able to access that as the public. But if you have any questions or concerns in regards to treatment or management of it, I'm not that person that's going to do that for you today. If you are concerned about that, please seek help from your primary care physician. Just wanted to say that disclaimer
Not
first.
people on the internet.
Right, not people on the internet.
Go see a real.
Those are the best doctors.
WebMD, baby. All right.
We kind of define. I think a lot of people, they hear the coronavirus and the flu, and there's other types of infections. So can we just get like to the basic of what the coronavirus is, but two, like how it falls in under other types of infections that people get?
Yes, that's a perfect question, actually. So the coronavirus, I don't know if a lot of people are aware, it's actually a very common broad term name used for a large variety of different viruses. There are technically 7 types of the coronavirus. The first 4 are a bunch of numbers and letters that I don't know if you guys care for me to repeat them, but they're most commonly linked to the cause of the common cold, which produces mild to moderate symptoms. The next 2 I know that you probably have heard of. in news back in like 2002, so early 2000s. The first would be SARS, SARS. CoV is technically the virus. It's a type of coronavirus that caused a severe acute respiratory syndrome. And it was initially found in China back in like the early 2000s. The second one is called MERS-CoV. That's another type of the virus. And it causes Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS. And then finally the seventh one is the pandemic that we're experiencing today, and that is causing COVID-19, which is the disease, the coronavirus 2019 disease. But the virus that specifically causes it is SARS-CoV-2. So it's like SARS number 2.
Okay.
Which I don't know if many people know that.
True.
Did not know
but
that.
What? So, we're speaking about a virus particularly. So what makes a virus different from a bacterial infection or a fungal infection?
Yeah, perfect.
And why is it an issue in fighting viruses? Like, why is it so hard to fight these?
Exactly. No, that's a good question. So the differences between a virus and bacteria. A bacteria is usually like a unicellular organism that's found in various different environments out in nature and even in our bodies. And a lot of the time, they're not harmful. We actually have bacteria that is in our gut that helps the digestion of food. But then there are other bacterial, things that cause infections, like tuberculosis or UTI or strep throat, things like that. Viruses are much smaller particles, they're much smaller things that can most likely lead to disease, more so than bacteria do, most often, I mean. And they require a host to live, to thrive. So what it does is it invades a cell and then takes over the machinery of that cell to reproduce itself. And a lot of the times, like I said, it can cause disease. And major ones could be HIV that leads to AIDS.
Right.
Bacteria are killed by antibiotics, which viruses cannot be killed by that. Unfortunately. So it takes a longer time frame for people to heal from viral infections.
So is that basically why we're seeing kind of this issue, I guess, or maybe just in terms of treating people, you can't just pump somebody full of an antibiotic and they'll be good.
Right. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but a lot of the times if you have gone to the doctor and they're like, oh, it's a virus, sorry, we can't prescribe you anything, you're just going to have to wait it out. And it sucks because then that, increases the exposure to other people and increases the likelihood of that spreading to other people.
So we have other infectious things such as fungal infections and stuff like that, but it seems that the virus, the only real preventative measure is something like a vaccine. And how does that, I know that affects our immune system, but what's the benefit of a vaccine with a virus type issue, I guess? Yeah.
So particularly with the influenza vaccination, they take the DNA of the virus and they replicate it, in the lab and put it into.
Oh, did we just lose them?
We did.
Oh no!
I hope the laptop
virus
didn't die.
struck.
The virus has taken our only viable source of info.
The virus has moved to technology now.
Guys, this is it. We're signing off.
We're signing off.
Just rack one and head out, dude.
While that's happening,
while that's happening, do you guys sorry, I'm kind of taking a little bit of a lead on the questions.
No.
Because I have a biology background, but feel free to jump in and ask any questions. I'm asking basic questions to get the kind of information I want to get out.
You're actually asking the kind of questions that I need answers to because I know very little when it comes to things like this, so I appreciate it.
My question was actually...
That's one of the things I want you guys to, because... if you have those questions too, feel free to ask them. So it's not just me interviewing Pauline.
Yeah.
My question was actually going to be about the vaccine. Was vaccine's the only way to fight it? Is that right? Basically, since antibiotics, things like that, don't work.
So, I mean, I can leave it to her to actually answer it, but really what it is a vaccine produces an immune response in your body, which gives you the antibodies to be able to fight off a certain disease, a viral disease.
Oh, hey.
Hi.
I see you.
We're back.
Did the virus attack?
Right.
All right, guys.
Like
We're signing back on now. The virus hasn't taken over entirely, so.
You guys hear us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Crystal clear.
You got Ozzy and Drix in there fighting.
All right, Peter died.
Damn, that is an old reference.
That's their only hope.
Osmosis Jones, baby, come on.
Ozzy and Drix. All right. Anyways, back to the vaccines.
Yes, Ben.
So back to the vaccines. Where was I? Okay. So for I kind of need to go. For an inactivated vaccine, like the influenza vaccination, and there are ones with the virus as well, but most of the time the one that is injected into most people, I believe, is not alive. So they take the DNA of the virus and they kind of grow it in the lab, and I think they harvest it in like egg material, I guess, to produce it and mass amounts of it, and then inject it into your body, and then expose that, so that it kind of tricks your body into thinking that it is infected, so it creates antibodies against that strain. But the unfortunate thing is that, different strains come up every year, so it's hard to know if you're protecting yourself from like that strain or not. You're still susceptible to the strain that you were not vaccinated for.
Hey, real quick, Pauline. Hey, Javin and Ben, are you hearing them choppy, or is that just me?
They're coming through a little choppy, yeah.
Who do you got for internet, man?
Ben, you're not at work right now.
Okay.
That's right then. So leave it where it is right now, because hopefully we'll get a battery to continue.
Actually, okay. You guys are.
Now you guys aren't choppy.
Yeah, now it's good.
How's that?
I think it was just kind of buffering through, but yeah, you guys are good now.
Wi-Fi.
And you came through clearly. You don't we heard I heard everything. It's just you're good. Thanks, coronavirus.
Yeah, thanks for yeah.
Quick question for you, actually. In your opinion, if a vaccine is created for coronavirus, how big of a threat are anti-vaxxers to the rest of society if that is the case, if we do get a vaccine for it?
Boy, I'm going to come back and answer that question when I get back on here.
CJ, Peaches is just like, all right.
Hold it in, Peaches. Hold it in.
Don't kill
your
me,
wife's turn right now.
He's just shaking.
No, I'm just wondering, would they play a part in not letting this virus, die off with the vaccines that will be created? Will that be an issue?
Or will they finally receive the justice they deserve?
Oh, God.
Pauline, can I jump in real quick and
I'm going to come at it. So I'm going to come at it in the perspective of a healthcare provider. And
okay. That's a good way to do it.
Let's just start off there. So, if you choose not to immunize, or there's a certain population that don't believe in immunizations, and then they catch that virus and then spread it to the rest of the world, unfortunately, there are people that are so immunocompromised that there are certain vaccinations they cannot receive because they're just not healthy enough. Like people that, maybe have a respiratory issue, or chronic respiratory disease, to where, their physician's probably like, no, that's contraindicated for you. We can't give you the flu shot right now. So that opens up their susceptibility to getting that. So when you are having people that are choosing not to vaccinate, even though they technically are a good candidate for it, that does continue the spread technically of that disease. So that's.
And can I I want to speak a little bit on the research element of this, because for those of you who don't know, I actually have a master's degree in biological fields. So the biggest issue is that it takes time to produce these vaccines too. Mm-hmm. And so to come up with a vaccine right now isn't that feasible. You still have to produce the vaccine, and that requires a production line basically. Yeah. And it would take some time to even produce one. And the other downside of it too is even if we did produce one, if you're already infected, it does nothing for you.
Yep.
So yeah, we maybe produce one, but by the time it's ready to be implemented, it may already be too late to stop really much more spread.
Right.
Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you do have a master's, so I think.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm speaking only from the research point of view, not from the medical point of view. But
Right.
it takes time to put those things in motion. You know, like we're so used to having Amazon where you click on something and it just shows up at your door. But vaccines don't really work like that.
Yeah.
You know, you can't just click a button and then the next day you have 300 million of them, which is what you may need to do what you need a vaccine to really do.
Exactly.
They don't just pop into existence like that.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, there's unfortunately a large risk population would be like the homeless, and if they don't have access to that vaccination and it continues to spread, they live in close quarters with each other. If they live in like shelters or something, that's also poses a threat.
Right. Go ahead, Javin.
I'm not sure if I'm gonna phrase this right. So because I hadn't even thought of that, like how, you know, the population of homeless people, how rampant it could spread through there, and how they're not, you know, really, they don't readily have like medical attention available.
Right.
Does that pose a big threat to like the rest of the community? Because, you know, a lot of times, you know, at least here in Colorado Springs, the homeless community seems to just kind of, you know, gather in their own little areas and do their vagrant activities. Would that, like, if an outbreak happened in the homeless community, would it pose a threat to everyone else in that?
Can I also jump in on that question too to add something to it, Javin?
Yeah.
Is it possible that the homeless are also probably more immune compromised than the average person? And two, maybe that's a good segue to talk about how the virus actually spreads itself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's good, Adam.
Good leeway. So obviously that we are, like, fortunately we have a lot of land to spread out, but if we lived somewhere like New York or like Tokyo where they're on top of each other and they're, you know, on the subway, people are in tight spaces all together from different walks of life, and someone coughs, then that makes everyone at risk for, you know, contracting that disease, that virus, I mean. So that's a good point that you brought up on how the coronavirus is contracted. Technically, like per the CDC, like other common viruses, the coronavirus can be contracted, I'd say, like if you're about 6 feet away from someone and they like sneeze or cough and those particles go into the air and you inhale them, you breathe them in. So that is considered droplet transmission. And other common like infections that you can contract by droplet transmission are, let's see, where's my notebook?
Oh, Pauline got super prepared, way more prepared than the rest of us ever have.
I think Pauline showed up to this and she saw the amount of notes that the rest of us had, and she's like, "Are you kidding me?" Like,
yeah.
I wanted to be extra prepared. Like,
we appreciate it because, as you saw, it took me 20 minutes to figure out how to record this. Like,
yeah,
It's true.
You're good. So other like diseases or infections that can be contracted from droplet transmission, obviously the flu, right? That's a major one. Common colds, strep, and pertussis, which is also known as whooping cough. So, I mean, it's a common way to contract respiratory illness is just by simply being close to someone that is infected.
And that, I mean, that in and of itself isn't too much different than any viral outbreak, right? Like that doesn't,
common cold.
whether it's the common cold or the coronavirus, that's always prevalent. Like it's.
Is it that the coronavirus in and of itself is just much more contagious? Or is there some other underlying factor that's making this a big deal when other viral infections haven't been in the past?
Yes. So we have high-risk populations, right? So specifically when we're talking about the coronavirus that we're experiencing now, it's mostly affecting people in the elderly age groups, and or people that are immunocompromised regardless of their age. So usually with people with, lung disease, heart disease, people with where their primary diagnoses have comorbidities that affect their other organs, like say if you have cerebral palsy, a lot of the times, unfortunately, they do tend to contract respiratory illness a lot quicker. And so it's those people that, have less protection. Their immune systems are not, strong enough to protect them against contracting the virus. But say if, one of us were to get that and we're pretty healthy young people, we would just most likely experience just like common cold symptoms. And even children, like even under the age of 10, they most likely will also have, experience more like mild symptoms or maybe none even.
One thing I'm going to point out as far as infection rate goes, and I'll dive a little more into this when we get to my segment, but in South Korea, they did a study of those who, now mind you, this is just tests. They're the outlier on this one, or the variable that would need to be taken into consideration as far as seriousness, is basically those who actually got tested. So keep in mind, this is a study based off of those who did test. Now, in South Korea, the study that they did, 2% showed a positive infection for the COVID-19 virus that is in question here. 98% were coming up as other respiratory issues or other sickness. So as far as infection rates are concerned, we have to take a look at the stats. Now, it's my understanding, and again, I could be wrong on this, but it's my understanding that the overall infection rate out of those who have been tested is at 4% worldwide, meaning that 96% of those who thought they were infected with the COVID-19 virus actually turned out to have some other respiratory illness, infection, or just something else going on.
Yeah. So Pauline, sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was saying, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that some of these cases weren't actually accurate in the diagnosis.
Are these cases that are like the 96% that CJ's talking about, or do they still fall in that same category of the 7 different like strains of the virus that is okay?
It probably could. It's like I said, like the first 4 of the coronavirus that's category that do cause like the common cold that all of us get every year.
So is COVID-19 or the coronavirus the pandemic, the source of the pandemic?
The pandemic is SARS-CoV-2. Okay. So it's like SARS-CoV-2, and then the disease that it causes is the COVID-19.
Okay.
Okay. I'm learning a lot here. Thank you.
That was the whole point of this. This is the most informative episode we've ever done.
Yeah, this is great stuff.
Now,
all right,
Pauline, let me ask you this. Actually, it's a 2-part question. One, those masks that you see everybody wearing, is that beneficial? And 2, if you do feel ill and we suspect that you have some respiratory infection, coronavirus or others, what are your recommendations?
So, again, with my disclaimer, I don't want to give any recommendation. But again, like per the CDC website, it does say that you can wear masks. In my personal opinion, being a healthcare provider, though, I don't think that would protect you. To be honest, if any mask would, it would be more likely the N95, which helps protect against, like if you're a healthcare provider or someone handling someone with tuberculosis. And I know tuberculosis is bacterial, and they're bigger.
Can you just describe like how those masks differ in the sense of like the contact patch with your face and stuff like that?
I think so. The N95 is more sealed around, and actually, I think it's made for your face. It's for the individual, right? Mm. So it prevents any kind of entryway or exit way. Whereas the masks that we commonly see at like the supermarket or even like in your doctor's office, they still have gaps there, and you're still like coughing, and it still can come out through the sides. A lot more times, it more so helps you if you were an infected person. It more so helps like you protect or keep other people from getting sick versus you getting sick if you were wearing that mask from other people on the outside.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to kind of get at, which is the idea that these masks, like what I don't want to do is promote this. The idea that wearing these masks is somehow like a force field that protects you. Because unless you really do have one of those high-tech, expensive masks, it doesn't really actually do too much unless you are the sick person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and again, too, I know that it's just kind of at least peace of mind. Like, it's just something that people want to do probably just to even just decrease the risk, I guess. Yeah. It's fine. And I mean, if the CDC recommends it, then that's good. And that's fine to do for, whoever's peace of mind. If they're like, ask you, hey, like if I had a patient and they were like, can you please wear a mask before you come into my home? Like, I'll absolutely respect that. But yeah, like you said, and I would probably be better at protecting, I guess, with that spread, but it's better than...
Let's just put it out there. Good luck finding one of those masks right now.
Yeah.
And
yeah, they're expensive.
So
yeah, not cheap. It's like $40 for two.
Kind of.
But it's also that because of what's happening right now, they've been kind of siphoned off to the people who actually need them the most, like the primary healthcare providers.
You go to a hospital and you steal any of their masks, like what's happening all across the U.S. and in China, you're a bad person. Leave the masks.
Yeah. That's a perfect.
You're a bad person.
Yeah. We're not.
PSA.
If a doctor gets sick, that's not taking out like a member of the army. That's like taking out a special forces guy. There isn't somebody that can just walk into his shoes.
If you want to see what happens, like for the people that are stealing those masks, if you want to see the repercussions of that, read about Italy right now. Because that's what happened over there. All their healthcare professionals got sick, and now Italy is in the fucking shitter. Like, they are in a bad, bad place because they were not prepared for this. Pauline, I have a question, and I think this might come across kind of silly or stupid, so I hope it doesn't. But we had spoken about this at work yesterday, about the potential, like, overuse of hand sanitizer, kind of going off what Alex said, how, like, people feel secure or comfortable because of the mask, even though it might not be doing a lot. Is there an overuse of hand sanitizer? Like, is there
a downside?
Yeah, like can you actually like be getting rid of good or beneficial bacteria that may exist on your skin, making yourself like too susceptible?
Maybe with hand sanitizer, but on the website, CDC website, they said that if you're not like, if you don't have soap readily available to you or like a sink to wash your hands properly, that you should carry around like hand sanitizer with at least 60% of alcohol in it at least. And so that I do have that for work just in case. But for me, I think it's more so like the overuse of and prescription of antibiotics that will cause, like those resistant bacteria like MRSA, things like that. And I think that's why, physicians nowadays are so strict on their prescription of antibiotics because of strains that come out like that are just resistant to them.
And I'll add on to that for you, Javin, too. And correct me if I'm wrong, Pauline, but hand sanitizer is good for things like bacteria.
Right.
But unfortunately, because of virus, alcohol is not going to kill a virus.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, when doctors, I believe, when they say, like, wash your hands, that's the best way to get rid of this. It's not because the soap kills the bacteria. It's because you're physically cleaning off the surface of your skin that may have the virus on it. It's not that the soap kills the virus.
Yeah, exactly. That motion of like warm water and then scrubbing for at least 20 seconds and then using, paper towel and really scrubbing that off. Like I back you up on that. That yes, hand sanitizer does not kill viruses.
Yeah. So that basically, I think at this point, all you would be doing with hand sanitizer is making yourself feel better and drying out your hands.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be real.
If that makes you happy, well, go ahead.
Yeah.
At my work, they've put in hand sanitizer everywhere you look, and so with it being there as soon as you walk in the door, I've definitely been using it a lot more than I've ever have in my whole life, and my hands have never been so dry. I'm bleeding at the knuckles.
It's probably not good for like the pH of your skin either.
Yeah, every time
Which
I walk in,
actually,
every time you turn a corner.
That being said, Pauline, I know this is a respiratory infection, but having dry skin like that and having a virus on your hand, maybe it's not the coronavirus, but does that open you up to some kind of other infection if you keep doing that?
So I would assume that if you was using so much and it was like cracking your hands and you were having like open wounds, that will leave you susceptible to infections. That's an entryway for bacteria or viruses to get into, I guess.
You're saying probably not very likely unless you're seriously abusing the alcohol content of that.
Just like dipping your hands in a trough of Purell and just like
soak it.
Right, yeah, that can be good for anyone to overly do it that way. Yeah.
We were just talking about it yesterday because I have a coworker that is like even before the coronavirus, like he's every 3 to 4 minutes, like he's dousing the Purell, and so like that's what sparked this conversation yesterday. Is like, really how beneficial is that in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're like on a run, like running errands, or like you're in the car and like maybe you touch something gross or something, or you're like, I just went to Target and like thousands of people have touched the handle, but like you forgot to wash your hands and you're like want to go stop by and get like a burger or something. Like the best thing that you could do is try to maybe just go inside the restaurant and wash your hands. But if you're like really running and on the go, I guess just like use that again, at least 60% alcohol, like hand sanitizer. But number one is just wash your hands before you even touch your face. Or if you do touch your face, you blow your nose, you cough, wash your hands before you eat food, after you use the bathroom. It's kind of funny because it's like basic infection control is all that is pretty much saying. And so like this overuse of hand sanitizer isn't gonna change that fact. You know what I mean?
Well, it's like we were watching the national emergency address at work yesterday, and I think I counted at least 10 plus times that the common sense of like wash your hands was brought up during that address was like almost appalling. Like, you nasty people, just stop being gross.
I stopped by McDonald's because I had to go to the bathroom, right? And I was driving home, like rushing to like get to this podcast. And a lady was changing her kid's diaper, and I was in the stall, right? And I did not hear the faucet running at all. She just changed the diaper and then fucking left.
She just dipped
But
out.
again, it sucks. Like it's silly to like have that repeated, but apparently there are like people that need to be educated on that don't wash their hands when they really should.
At my work in the bathroom, they just put up signs on instructions, step by step, how to wash your hands, 1 through 5.
Yeah.
Like, what
and
do you do next?
It's not just for people who work in the food industry. It's for anyone.
Yeah,
I work at an office, and we all touch each other's computers, staplers, the fire room, pens. People probably be like chewing on their pens and stuff and like putting that on people's desks or like coughing and not like washing their hands at all, or at least like not even sanitizing them.
You know what's funny about that? My very first like real job was in a research laboratory. And so if you use the computer, one, you had to put on a brand new set of gloves. And every morning, we UV lighted the entire lab to get rid of any stray RNA, DNA because of the research we were doing. Now, granted, it was only because of the research we were doing. Not that anything was, like, dangerous or anything, but it was, like, the sterilest room I ever worked in just because of what we were doing.
Well,
exactly.
And I was thinking about this the other day because, for those of you that don't know, I work at a university, and so like we are super, super like, I guess not necessarily proactive, but very reactive in this situation where it's like, oh my God, people are getting sick, and it's kind of like what what's going on at Ben's work, where it's just like hand sanitizer is everywhere now. Drink it, put it in your eyes, But we are now, I think it's every hour to an hour and a half, we're required to grab, just Clorox wipes and basically just scrub down the whole office. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, why don't we do this all the time?
Yeah.
Like, this is just a general, like, because you're right. Like, I can't tell you how many times, a new employee needs help, and I'll just, like, reach onto their computer and do something for them, and then just go right back to my life and not even think about it.
Part of that, like, it does make sense. The idea of scrubbing something down makes sense, but I think the reason I don't think you'd want to use Clorox kind of comes back to the same reason that we don't want to overprescribe antibiotics. Is you're constantly using alcohol to kill the bacteria, then you can potentially produce an alcohol-resistant bacteria. Whereas if you just scrub it down with soap and water, that doesn't necessarily have an effect later on in terms of the reproductive capabilities of that bacteria.
And think about that.
Yeah, because I think there is such a thing as like over sanitizing or like over sanitizing things, because like you said, that could do anything for your immune system, right? Because a lot of times that's how you gain an immune system, is by exposing yourself to different viruses or bacteria that are out there, and that's how your body protects you from getting sick. And like you said, like over sanitizing things or overuse of antibiotics can lead to strains that are more tolerant to that treatment.
So basically, Javin, don't do that repeatedly.
Maybe do it like at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then just before you eat anything, wash your hands. And then after you wash your hands, and then after you use the bathroom, wash your hands. If you didn't know.
That makes sense.
What this really comes down to is soap and water. Like, really,
soap and water. Warm water, not cold water. You don't burn yourself either, but like.
I don't need to be stockpiling on toilet paper and hand sanitizer, is what you're saying.
Maybe toilet paper, but
toilet paper is not perishable.
Can I bring that story up real quick? Do you guys mind if I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely.
So the other day, I am in class, and my professor, he's the kind that likes to go on tangents, and he was talking. This is before the national emergency. It was when Colorado was just still in a state of emergency. And he was like, I'm really having trouble wrapping my head around the shortage of toilet paper. He's like, I just feel like in this scenario, in this circumstance, there's so many different, so many more beneficial things to like be stockpiling on. Student in my class raises his hand, and he was like, but if you think about it in the long run, like from a financial standpoint, it's not that bad of an idea because toilet paper doesn't perish. And if he would have stopped talking right there, it would have been like just a wonderful thought. But then he adds to it. He goes, it's stupid, but it makes more sense than buying all that food. And like my professor just stopped, and he kind of like just went back to writing on the board. Like there was no acknowledgement to the comment at all. He was just like,
well, here's the other thing too. You say that until you're down to one toilet paper, and you go to the store like I did yesterday, and there is no toilet paper.
Yeah, but by that dude's by that dude's logic though, like, is he going to eat this toilet paper if it comes down to it? Like, it doesn't perish.
It wouldn't do much for him.
No, it seems pretty counterproductive.
Again, right? And again, like going back to it, this sounds like he's a young guy. Would you say?
Yeah.
Probably a healthy person, most likely. So what is his reason for doing that? Are you going to just quarantine yourself in your house? If you're not an immunocompromised person or an elderly person, if you're not an at-risk person, you technically should not be quarantining yourself in your house. That's too much.
Silly.
In my own personal opinion, not as a healthcare provider. But again, if you are immunocompromised, or if you are sick and you do actively have a fever or a coughing or sneezing, no matter if it's the coronavirus or not, if it's the flu, common cold, you should stay home because you need to protect others around you, the ones that are at risk. So that's kind of like my main point that I wanted to get out there is like us as healthy people don't necessarily need to worry about that, but we do need to worry about protecting the people that can't protect themselves, essentially.
So real quick, before we get into Peach's section, I wanted to bring up this because we started this off by talking about scary stories. And this is something that is an infectious issue that scares the crap out of me. Prions. A prion infection, aka mad cow disease. Because unlike pretty much every other type of infection, a prion infection is a protein infection. And it's the morphology of the protein that actually infects you, which means there is nothing you can really do to protect yourself from a prion.
That is terrifying.
Don't prions typically hide in the brain too?
They fuck with your brain typically, yeah.
So I see they're reaching up like this. I thought he was trying
They turn your brains into basically Swiss cheese.
Oh, yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
That's terrifying.
And now I'm scared. That's the next big thing.
And even
folks.
then, we survived.
Stay tuned. Oh,
So,
I don't want to be all Swiss cheese, Brandon.
But let's all be careful. This is not a prion
Fondue
infection.
brain.
Right.
Because that would actually be very, very, very terrifying.
Terrifying, yeah. And that sounds like that could take down even the healthiest of people. Then that could affect anyone. It sounds like.
Right, but I believe prion infections, you only contract those by actually consuming something with a prion.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not airborne or anything like that.
Right. So the transmission, just don't eat beef. Whatever.
Don't eat beef.
Or whatever's infected.
Put that beef down.
The vegans were right the whole time. Just kidding.
Yeah.
But eating
You want to talk about
that's-
immunodeficient or people that are
That's actually
immunocompromised? Talk about vegans. I'm kidding.
Just kidding.
Whoa.
Let's see it in the comments.
You were vegan, now you're vegan.
Oh.
Okay.
That'll be our first T-shirt.
Once you were vegan, and now you will be
vegan.
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 Scott Pilgrim.
But
into
transitioning that into Peaches, like, to me, a prion.
A viron.
A Veron? What? No. Anyways, that would be kind of like, that would freak me out even more than this. But what are your, I mean, I think there's two elements to this problem, or this infection. It's one, yes, there's a health concern, but two, there's social and economic implications from something such as this. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the social, economical implications of us getting sick, or even just worried that we will get sick.
Was that question again?
If you're talking about social economics, I mean, just as an experience in the last week, my 401k has dropped $1,000, so that's like really cool. But
Oh no! What?
Super facetious.
yeah, I'm
Not
super
cool.
stoked.
Wow, I need to look into that.
Yeah.
Check your fidelity.
It's going to hold more than just social and economical implications, in my opinion. I'll admit I'm by no means an expert.
Yeah, me neither.
But I also think what we're forgetting is the political implications as well. So, without the militarization, it was essentially martial law is what we ended up getting yesterday. I'm going to actually reference a study here, just to talk about some of the economical implications. And what we're specifically going to use is the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And what they found were that there were several areas that were suffering more than others when it comes to what's happening right now. So to give you an idea, right now what we're seeing is I think what we'll do is we'll kind of talk a little bit more about China, since that's sort of where everything happened. Right now, some of the sectors in China that are really suffering are going to be the manufacturing and servicing sector. They have decreased to what they're calling a record low. Automobile sales are down 80%.
Peaches, real quick, can I just bring up something that has to do with what you just said?
Okay.
What do you feel about because there's been a measurable decrease in carbon that's being thrown into the atmosphere, and so it's been measurable that there's an effect on climate change because of this.
Well, yeah, like I said, automobile sales have fallen by 80% in.
So are you
China.
saying that it's a
People
good thing
around
that everybody got sick?
Bro,
Words in his mouth.
who do you work for? The Wall Street Journal, bro? What the hell is
I
that?
immediately get put on a watch list.
And most people, what I just heard you say is that more people should die.
Please say it louder into this recording.
Global climate change?
Dude,
Yeah.
you would
What
make
I'm
a
saying
fine
is that,
reporter.
I'm probably not going to get into that, because that's going to be subjective, but, one could just simply say, it's part of the natural order of things, right? And the earth knows how to regulate itself better than anybody. So, if humans are destroying it, maybe this is Mother Nature's way of saying, guys, stop, you're fucking it all up,
And so is that
I don't know.
why,
Is it good or is it bad? I'm not going to comment on that.
but is that why planet Earth created the virus, do you think? To get rid of us? Or is it some kind of...
It's not to get rid of us. If you're going to look at it from that
Regulation.
standpoint, it's sort of just like regulation or checks and balances to make sure nobody gets more powerful.
See, that's an interesting thing that you say, because in a lot of other animal species, we have checks and balances like that. But unfortunately, lately, just the civilized world in general, we've created vaccines and antibiotics and all these things that have kind of kept it in check. Our humans' ability to not get sick in check. And so perhaps this is actually a natural phenomenon that is good for humanity, even though it doesn't seem so right now.
I'm certain some people feel that way. As for me, again, I'm not going to comment on that. That's going to be controversial, because even if you were to explain from just an objective, like not even just like a human perspective, it's always going to come across bad. But, what we are seeing that. And like I said, when we talk about that, I mean, if automobile sales are going down and people are staying inside and, sports events are going to be canceled, you're going to naturally see a carbon decrease because of that. Even exports in China have fallen, just over 17%. So we're seeing a lot less movement and a lot less use of fossil fuels. So it just sounds natural to me, given the nature of the situation that's going on.
I'd say that's fair to say.
Yeah, as far as everything else, right now in America, what we're really seeing is we're seeing a lot of like the tourism and obviously travel-related business. We're seeing those particular sectors decreasing because, people think apparently the way to resolve this, and we did, we've heard this throughout the mass hysteria is, just stay indoors, right? Some people are quarantined, some people just don't want to leave. We've had, like I said, a lot of sports events have been canceled, NHL, NBA, things like that. I even think, I don't watch a lot of sports. I do watch Supercross, and guess what? Yeah, that's affected too. Right now, the guys I was just mentioning, they reference that right now they think the International Air Travel Transport Association estimates that throughout the year of 2020, they're going to lose approximately $63 to $113 billion in revenue.
Holy shit.
So, yeah, we're talking about naturally, essentially a cleaner way to go, because we're not going to be traveling as much, right? We have these travel bans in place. We've had one with Asia for a while, the newly released European one. We may even see it come down to a state or local level where, maybe we're seeing curfews and people actually mandated to stay at home, like basically restricting local travel. I actually think it just got released that military personnel are actually going to have. Were you going to say that, Jeff?
No, well, I was gonna say that I had read something briefly this morning on how the European ban had extended over to Ireland and the UK as well, and then there was some allusion to possible like state restrictions and local county restrictions if it got that bad.
I hope not, because I just bought a ticket to Florida for $97 round trip. I'm really trying to go. $97.
Well, I mean, like I was saying,
Ben's that meme,
Pauline's
dude.
still there.
yeah,
Huh?
You're that meme. I heard something.
With that being said, like, I have a question for Pauline, which I think is an important one, which is even if we quarantine ourselves, we restrict ourselves, and then we kind of let it pass, what happens when we let go of all those quarantines and everybody just kind of comes back into the populace? Are we facing potentially a second wave of infections?
you're going to need to ask that.
I'm
again.
so
I felt
sorry.
so bad about it.
So we were just talking about people kind of quarantining themselves and travel restrictions, and so, okay, if we get through the first phase of this and then we relinquish these quarantines, and the populace kind of goes back to life as normal, do we open ourselves up to a possible second wave of infections?
I'm not sure. It'd be hard to predict that right now. I think second wave of infections if we do like.
I guess ultimately what I'm saying is if we start quarantining ourselves, there are some people that are infected, but the numbers go down, so we think it's all clear, and then we kind of resume life as normal, and you still have some infected people going back out into the populace. Does that not open us back up to just repeating what's happening right now?
I guess it would depend on how, like, what is the term? How compliant that infected people are to management and treatment of the coronavirus.
Okay.
Because I know that after exposure, it can you can take like 14 days for symptoms to show up, right? So one, if you know that you have been exposed to someone and that has been tested positive for the coronavirus, then I would stay home because, again, you don't want to infect the population. And also take the test, make sure that if you're positive, negative, whatever, or if you do have it, I think there's information out there. And again, like ask your physician on how long you have to be quarantined, how long you have to stay at home for, and follow the necessary protocol. So I think, in general, it's a responsibility of everyone to take care of themselves and to comply to what's prescribed to them by their physician. So, but if we don't do that, then yes, I think that does open it back up because it takes one person, as we all know, to infect, and then that can replicate and spread so easily. It's very contagious. So.
Right. So, Peaches, do you think that with all of this, what I'm kind of hearing a little bit too from you is it sounds like you're setting the stages for martial law potentially. Are you at all concerned about that?
Well, martial law involves the militarization of force, or the force has to be carried out by the military. So basically what we got yesterday was martial law minus that militarization. So, right now, I mean, we'll get more into that, but right now I want to stay focused on that original point of the economical impacts because, and I'm not going to bore anybody with numbers. Anytime most people actually talk, economics and what's actually happening with the stock market, it's boring. Just know this, it's been falling, but it's also election year. So, I mean, that kind of happens. I mean, that's a pretty consistent trend. Anytime election year comes around, the economy does struggle a bit. But after, the declaration of the declaration that Trump made yesterday, we did see it go back up a little bit. But right now, what's really going to end up happening is we're going to see a lot more on the smaller level, with the exception of maybe a few giants, Disneyland, things like that. What we're really going to end up seeing is a lot of government subsidization with that, and Trump did a pretty good job outlining that. I'm not going to lie. So right now, I think what's the main thing that we're going to have to consider when it comes to the economical implications of this is really, until we not only have an understanding of the behavior and the risk associated with this, and of course the long-term effect of the contingent, I think I'm using that correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, until we have an understanding of that and actually have a foreseeable end to this, that ambiguity with how this could end is the biggest threat to the economy right now.
It's that uncertainty.
Yeah, it's really just the uncertainty of the situation. I'd like to go back to what was her name? Deborah Birx. During the address that the president made, she got up there, and her and one of the other folks out there, I forget, he was just some grimy old man with an East Coast accent. We're basically,
Bernie Sanders
response to what we're getting right now. Yeah, Bernie, not him. Well, what we're seeing right now is not necessarily a response to a major threat. It's a response to make sure it doesn't become a major threat, is what we're seeing right now.
Correct. I would agree with that.
We've seen, statistics out there that nobody is talking about, with the exception of Dr. Birx. Yesterday, she did talk a little bit about these statistics when she mentioned that, this is a response to something that could be, not what is, right? It's not that it is super infectious. It's not that it is super deadly. But we want to stop it before we find out that it is actually super infectious and super deadly. But, a lot of people are forgetting that. I think as of right now, you're more probably, statistically speaking, more likely to die from your just common flu than you are from the COVID-19 virus. And that's because, as of right now, it's got close to a 98% survival rate.
But so, even though, I'm not 100% up on my virality, but the reason that more people die from the common flu is that more people just get infected by it, but the actual percentage of people infected who die is slightly higher with the coronavirus. It's just that most people get infected by the normal flu. It's from what I've gathered.
If we did see it get to the point where it is right now, these numbers might be skewed, right? Then we'd be able to get some accurate numbers. So you're right, infected population with the flu versus COVID-19, not going to be straight across the board, right? Obviously, this is true more because more people have this thing, right? So I totally get that, but again, I just want to reiterate to a lot of people that you got to remember, even at the higher level of the government, and even some technically the private sector. We had some huge conglomerates up there, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, LabCorp. We have a bunch of these huge names up there. A lot of them are saying, just take common steps, man. Not that many people are dying from this. We just don't want it to become a big thing, right?
But I think this ultimately gets to the question that I really wanted to talk to you about, is just that the natural fear of the populace and how that impacts everything. Like, for example, we were just talking about people buying up tons of toilet paper. Like, that's not necessarily the most rational thought. But yet, I went to the grocery store yesterday and you could not buy bread. So I thought, well, I'll just buy some yeast and flour to make bread if I needed to. And you couldn't buy flour.
Yeah. So I don't need the notes. I think we should briefly touch on what the president said yesterday. But this brings up a wonderful point. I've been saying for years, because I got a degree in administrative law, and I guess what that basically meant, that meant I studied a lot of political philosophy and a lot of administrative law. That's all you do to be specialized in a degree like that. When we talk about what's happening in contemporary American politics, we need to look all the way back to right about 1910 with Woodrow Wilson. When he was president, he started a movement called the Progressive Movement. And in this particular movement, there were to be two branches of government. It would be politics and administration. And administration would be the ones who would write the law, and the politics would be the ones who give broad delegations to the administration and then do nothing more than guide public opinion. And what we are seeing right here is kind of a good example of almost widespread hysteria over something that nobody's really actually taken a look into, right? When we talk about rational responses, it's not just toilet paper, right? We're talking people avoiding eating Chinese food, avoiding anybody who has a slight tan because they might look like they've been to Asia or are from Asia. Not drinking Corona beer, right? Corona beer has been going on sale. It's because nobody wants to drink it for some reason. we're seeing a widespread hysteria with nobody actually using reason or facts to go against this, kind of like Pauline was talking about. There's basic things you can do to make sure you're not getting the virus and not giving it to people around you, right?
Or at least reducing your risk.
Yeah, or at least reducing your risk, right? And when we talk about certain events like this, I would actually like to point out at the end of the speech yesterday, there were a lot of things that were said. First off, it's pretty obvious that it is election season and Mike Pence is Trump's hype man. With that being said, we saw a lot of nationalism, and we saw a lot of trying to be an inspiration, right? Mike Pence got out there and said, this should be an inspiration that this is happening right now. You're getting the full government's response. You need to be a patriot. You need to talk about,
For those who have not watched this speech, we will have a link in the description. Because what Peaches is talking about is very relevant to what we're speaking on, so you should watch it.
Yeah, if you have not watched the national emergency address, I would highly recommend it. We will put the link in there, but the reason I say that, and I don't mean to hijack this from you, CJ, but when I watched that yesterday was when it felt like this whole situation became a little bit more real and more than just like memes and jokes and things of that nature, because you really, I don't know, it's almost surreal in a way, and I encourage you to watch it if you haven't.
You know what's also very surreal about it too is I definitely lean right politically, but I am not a fan of Donald Trump, and I will say that is the most presidential I've ever seen him. I'm not saying he was a great depiction of a president. Mm-hmm. All I'm saying is that was the most presidential I have ever seen him.
I'd agree with that statement.
But it's funny the amount of nationalism that we had in there, this whole idea of being a patriot. There was a quote that he said that stuck out very specific to me that almost seemed out of place. And it was near the end of his speech. He was like, we will defeat this threat. And the first thing I couldn't help was to go all the way back to 2001 with George W. Bush and think, wow, we will defeat this threat, right? Trying to rally everybody together. Mike Pence even got out there and almost verbatim said, this should be an inspiration. We are broadening what the federal government can do. We are going to be breaking laws right now that are going to restrict us from doing what we need to do to respond to this appropriately. And I go back to 2001 and what happened after 2001. Well, Congress passed the Patriot Act. They even pushed a law to the floor called the Violent Radicalization and Homegrown Terrorism Act that actually was a little bit too hot for Congress at the time, so they rewrote it, labeled it as the NDAA, which basically, between the two, allows the government to not only continue the suspension of habeas corpus, but also violate First, Fourth, Fifth, etc., constitutional rights of its citizenry purely in the name of protection, right? Having that peace of mind. So when I think of things that have happened in the past historically, and then I think about what's happening right now and what they were bragging about, the only thing I can help think of is that once again, in the name of safety, we are going to continue to give up our rights. And it was, again, why would you say in the midst of what is a strain of the flu or the SARS virus, why would you say we will defeat this threat? It's almost like a physical entity is now actually coming after us. So we as Americans need to rally up together to defeat this threat when it's basically health precautions that any country can take. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Why didn't we have to bring nationalism into this? Why were they trying to hype us up so much to get behind this idea?
Well, if I could have any idea on it, I think you've already said it. It's election season. Any of these speeches or these addresses that any politician is going to give right now, based on coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever the fuck it is, it's going to be diluted by a message of like, we also care about you, so vote for us.
Yeah.
no matter where it comes from right now.
Question is a little more directed with that. Let me give you a few notes that I have regarding this, and some of these are exact quote. Okay, Trump said that we're going to use the full power of the federal government. We're going to provide $50 billion as essentially your typical Keynesian economic stimulus package to try and boost the economy temporarily. They're going to force states to set up emergency preparedness plans. They're going to give broad new authority to the director of the HHS, which is an administration, not the government. They're going to waive laws to enable healthcare providers to be able to do what they need to do to contain whatever infectious disease up there. They're going to waive requirements for hospitals, how long patients can stay there, what they have to do to actually even get there. In other words, they're going to remove any obstacle that enables the U.S. to, quote, help our people. So what's the implication, in your opinion?
Peaches, I'm scared now. Are we going to see what we saw in China, where people just show up in vans and basically kidnap people without their say to quarantine them?
Well, I want you to keep in mind, those are quotes directly from his speech.
That's
so
what I'm asking you.
I'll give you my opinion. Javin, what do you think?
I wouldn't say I'm as afraid of that kind of scenario, but and it's not even necessarily fear that I have. It's almost like I take everything that is going to come out of Donald Trump or Mike Pence's mouth with a cynical grain of salt, and especially when you're talking about things like this where they are in a national emergency, they are essentially going to be able to break laws for the safety and the betterment of people. And in this scenario, sure, I can see, how do I say this? I can see what they're getting at, but it's a very slippery slope because we're declaring a national emergency essentially over the flu. And when you allow people to start breaking laws and, drifting into that gray area over something like the flu, and people are eating into the hysteria, then in my opinion, that allows for a perpetuation of more control, more national emergencies declared for something that you're using it when it might not be necessary. And you're
Could
just
it be a false, quote unquote, kind of like a false flag in the sense of if this happens, like what I was just talking about, like a prion infection, like those would legitimately scare me. So do you now take what we've set a precedent for, and then maybe in the future, quote unquote, blow up a prion infection into this whole new world of craziness?
It's dichotomous because you're how much, if you don't trust the government, how can you trust them, or how can you look at something where okay, this is for public health, but you can never, you can never really look at something as if it's completely, humanitarian driven by the government.
Mm-hmm.
I like to think of Shaun of the Dead. There's that crazy little village, which was such a wonderful metaphor for kind of what we're talking about when we have these emergencies. They always reference, right, it's for the greater good, right? And, Machiavelli, I've told you guys this many times, and I'll probably use this as the number one reason. Machiavelli in his book, The Prince, specifically said removing all evil removes a lot of good too. How much are you or we as the citizen willing to give up just for the sake of safety, right? Because you're not going to be able to say, take care of me and my every need and not still expect to be the free person that you are today, right? I think, wasn't it Johnny Cash that said, if you're, he's talking about a store and that, or a place of work, and his place of work, gives him everything, a paycheck, a place to live, food to eat. And he's like, well, I'm no longer really just me anymore. I owe my soul to the company store,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, Alex, to your point, right, what did we see in China? We saw a lot of random stops, a lot of basically your violation of your Fourth Amendment, right, which, even the U.S. Supreme Court has already ruled on, swabbing the mouth is unconstitutional, or it's a violation of, well, I don't know the Supreme Court's rule on it. Anyways, it's a violation of your Fourth Amendment, right? Searches, no seizures. And what we're seeing in China is a lot of random stops. It is a full-on police state. You cannot go anywhere without getting tested if you try to enter a building, cross a road, whatever the case is. Or, to Alex's point, even more scary, where people are literally being hauled off in the middle of the night, black-bagged, to get quarantined without their families knowing.
Here's the other thing, too, though. China was kind of partially already an authoritarian state to start with. So
social credit program is bullshit.
But my point is it easier for a country like that to get away with it versus the United States, or are we on a slippery slope to becoming that?
We're already there. What I want you to keep in mind, let's talk about the actual example, right? Why would I speculate when I can take it directly from the horse's mouth? So let's actually talk about his plan a little bit, right? Maybe not go into full detail. They're going to provide tests. And the way that this conversation seemed to go was that of involuntary to voluntary. It was, you're going to be forced to do this it's going to be voluntary, right? And I want to say, specifically quoting him, all will be tested unless we don't think they should. I think the last part, think they should, is a little bit paraphrased, but he said that,
Is
right?
that a direct quote? Because and I'm only saying this because what I do remember, and I'm paraphrasing, was him saying, if you don't need to be tested, you shouldn't be tested.
All right, we're going to get into that. He led into the whole tests, stating, we'll be tested unless we don't think you should be tested. And then went into talk about their plan to have 500 million tests within a month. They're going to be utilizing the private sector to do so. They're going to be called drive-through tests. And here's your quote, Alex. I don't think we'll need all of the tests, because if you don't need to be tested, don't go.
No, that wasn't it. There was actually a point in that conversation where he was basically, and the way I gathered it and interpreted it was, we have all these tests, but we still don't want to waste all of these tests. So if you don't meet the criteria for being tested, you shouldn't get tested.
He did say that, yeah. And he said that right after talking about how much they want to have within a certain time frame, who's going to hold it. Right now, they're utilizing a lot of Google to help with this. They're utilizing a lot of Walmart. The drive-thru tests are actually going to be in Walmart parking lots. The whole point of this is to stop the spread of the disease, right? What they also sort of hinted at is the broad authority within the CDC and the HHS. I don't know. It seemed to me like it was hinting towards surveillance. I don't have any justification beyond speculation with that. What we do know is that there's some areas that they're sort of considering more of the epicenter of this, California, Colorado, Washington, things like that.
But I don't know how you introduce surveillance based on this anyways. You know what I mean? Because you can't just run a drone over a populace and have an answer.
NSA's already been known to hack your computer.
Hey guys, real quick. Ben's got to bounce, so we're losing one of our guests now.
Good having you, Ben.
Appreciate you guys
for being part of the discussion.
Absolutely, have
Hope
you
it
on
was
again.
informative.
Man.
Hope you're not scared.
We'll see, but appreciate having me on, and I learned a lot today. You guys are a lot smarter than I am, I would say, and it was a nice conversation, though. Appreciate you guys.
Well, cool. Well, feel free to share this podcast with anybody and everybody.
He already does. Ben has been on the forefront of sharing our blogs and podcasts for a long time, so he's the OG person putting our name out there.
Yeah, I'm a supporter.
Perfect.
All right, cool, man.
All right, you guys have a good one, though. Appreciate y'all.
Love you, dude.
Thank you.
Bye.
But, just to sort of continue on, and we don't have a lot more talking points when it comes to this, but it's interesting to me how many companies from the private sector that they're utilizing versus their administrations. It's almost like they took it a one step further. You talk about corporate America and having that monopolization was just so interesting to me that they would do that. I'm not going to say that proves any other points, but it is funny that, Dr. Birx and a few other people were relating to the HIV/AIDS breakout in 1981. They are talking about mandatory quarantine of 14 days. The big question is quarantine Is that voluntary? Because it doesn't. They're making it not seem like it's quarantine. So I'd like to know the guidelines on that.
Can I ask you something? Actually, now that you bring that up, did you find that to be? I guess I did. I found it to be a weird, not necessarily analogy, but like a parallel drawn between this and the AIDS outbreak that she had brought up. I got the point that she was getting at about how it took almost, basically 11 to 15 years to really have anything as far as like a viable test for AIDS. But I just found that to be more of like, I feel like they could have done without that comment, because now you're just adding, from what I can tell, some more hysteria into it, because now you have this correlation between AIDS and the coronavirus. That's the way I saw it.
And I can add a little bit of that from the research point of view. You got to remember, when the AIDS epidemic broke out, we didn't have the genetic testing tools that we have so commonly available now. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you guys want to know something that is mind-blowing, you need to just research the simplicity of PCR, but the impact of PCR. Basically what that means is you were able to take very small samples of DNA and replicate it and do testing and genome sequencing and all this stuff. And if you've ever done a PCR, they're actually
that much complex, though. I know we've advanced medically, but I think really that was nothing more than a justification of the actions they're taking now. They're saying, we don't want to wait 11 years before we get it under control. We don't want to wait 4 years before we
point I'm trying to get at,
support or
true, but again, the point I'm trying to get at, and I see you smirking because you know me and Peaches go at it, but part of the reason it took that long was because we did not have the genetic tools that we have now.
Right.
The other thing
I can see that, but I think it was just a justification
I'm going to
for
cut
spending
you off
50
here,
million.
sir. Sir, I demand my
Sir!
minutes. Sir,
and we've officially turned into Fox News.
Yeah.
No, but my other point of this is it's still something that is to some extent going to come and pass. This specific virus. There will be others in the future, no doubt, but this specific one, to treat it as something as similar to the AIDS virus is irrelevant, because it's not in the terms of how that virus works. Your body is capable of producing the antibodies to fight off this coronavirus. The AIDS virus is completely different. And so to justify, or to try and like make a connection between the two is so irrelevant that it's baffling.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
I felt like it was like a fear
I thought it
mongering
was
thing.
that it was in there as well.
But I mean, I get the parallel that she drew, but I just feel like it was like a fear mongering thing. Like, it added more to the oh my God, it's like AIDS. Like let's treat it like AIDS, and I just.
It's not. It's definitely not that.
I just know right now, they said it several times, the next 8 weeks are critical. So we're going to be looking for some, I think they're in the promulgation phase, if you will. I don't even know if that can be called that because it's an executive order. They're in that phase right now to basically talk about what exactly the plan is, right? We know that there's a $50 billion stimulus that's going to be coming. They're waiving interest on student loans, mandating, a certain amount of time for sick leave with different companies. And, we're going to see a lot of suffering. And what we're going to have to see is the government essentially subsidizing those companies that were affected.
I'm a perfect example of that. I mean,
yeah.
Well, Peaches, you work in an industry that is still mandated by law. Pauline obviously works in an industry that is at very high need right now.
Mm-hmm.
Javin's in school, so that's a thing. But I work in marketing. You know what I mean? Like, what?
Yeah.
So,
just a little stab. Just a little stab. Don't worry about it. I'm good.
He was an Army boy for a while, but now
my point with you being a student is that as long as you're enrolled in a school because of your military experience, you still get some kind of stipend.
Yeah, no, that is actually true. Fortunately for me, and this, I was really thinking about it this morning. I'm very blessed that my source of income kind of comes from school, and it's not really affected by that. But there are tons of people that are getting, for a lack of better terms, dicked down by this situation because they don't have those same benefits.
Right, and that's kind of what I was getting at, which is, I work in advertisement, and I sell furniture most of the time. Like, right now is not the premier buying time for furniture.
I'll buy a couch.
I'm buying a
You
couch.
better. I need to pay
Dude, yeah, Gavin needs to buy a chair.
Yeah, actually, ow. Oh, this works out perfect.
Oh, man.
No, we're never letting you have a chair, though, Javin.
Fuck you, I'm sitting on a stool right now.
But my main thing, though, and I want to hear from both of you, all right? What do you think about all the, be a patriot, the nationalism hype behind this, and what do you ultimately think is the end result of this?
To me, it's the same. The whole, be a patriot thing, that is used anytime the government as a whole needs support. It's the easiest thing to say, be a patriot, be a good American, and in this situation, it's be a patriot, be a good American, wash your hands, and it's the same.
It is.
It's
and
a
I would
mangled
agree with
idea.
that, but I think in this instance, as cliche as it may be, it may not be a bad thing either. Yes, it may be cliche, but I don't necessarily see a downside of it.
No, there's really no downside to washing your hands.
Right.
Just being clean, I don't see the.
Do you think we're gonna start seeing magnets on cars where instead of it was a ribbon, it's just soapy hands doing this?
just like two hands linking together,
Oh my
washing
God,
up.
Javin, find a magnet person. We are selling these as of tomorrow.
Just like.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I thought about going online and, on those websites where you can make a custom shirt. I was just going to make one since I did.
I have the.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your mumble talk. Were you rapping?
I'm making, mumble, yeah.
I would love it if you just dropped a verse right now. That'd be wonderful.
I would love
Probably
it.
not going to happen. No, I was going to go get a shirt, like a custom-made shirt that said I have the coronavirus.
Hey. Well, I mean, you don't really like people approaching you, so that would probably be the best shirt you could have.
You'll be burned at the stake right now, bitch.
Colorado Springs, man, burned. Oh man, no, I don't.
I think, guys, honestly, we've rambled on quite a bit.
We
want to kind of wrap up. This has been the longest podcast we've done, the most informative. We've had 2 guests on our show. It's been quite and also the first time we've done this remotely.
This was actually a pretty good experience. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, this was fun.
But I feel like we should wrap up so we don't lose other people's interests later on.
Yeah.
Do we have any final thoughts, guys?
Well, let me look back through the notes again. Well, obviously we started off with Ben's kind of just very coincidental sleep paralysis experience, which honestly I feel like just talking about that, we could have our own podcast just about sleep paralysis. The more I talk about it with you guys, but that was cool. We led into the idea of the Slender Man stabbing, and then what was his name? David Berkowitz. Yeah, David Berkowitz. Going in from there, Pauline was nice enough to grace us with some real education.
We should all give her a round of applause.
Pauline took us to church for a little bit, let us know what's really going on out there. And then, excuse me, we had gone into, the fuck are the rest of my notes? Oh, that's all I wrote down. Sweet. But no, I don't know, CJ. How would you summarize what you had brought up, if you could?
Who?
CJ. Peaches. Oh. God damn it. Oh, I lost your audio.
Yeah, we can't hear you at all. All right, well, you guys are done. I'll summarize what I what I believe, while they figure out their technical virus issues. No, I think to some extent, I think that the mass hysteria has been overblown. But coming from a biological background, I do believe this is something that's to be concerned. Not necessarily to the extent that it is, but it's something that is concerning enough to justify some kind of reaction. Now, I think we've blown it out of proportion. But again, like I said, there are also other types of infections that are much worse and much more scary than this. And so, kind of summing up what Peaches had been talking about too, which is, if you use this to create a precedent, you could potentially create more slippery slopes in the future with other types of infections that could potentially be much more severe than this.
Well, and I think it goes even further than infections, and that's kind of the dangerous part of this kind of national uprising, if you will. It is a slippery slope, and whether it's an infection or some other type of mass hysteria, which can be caused by basically anything if it's reported about correctly or incorrectly. So I don't know. That's kind of the whole wish-washy. Like how much trust can you really put in the people that are supposed to care for you? I guess.
Right. All right, Peaches, we still can't hear you, so you're going to have to, sign language your response.
Can you blow us a kiss?
Yeah. There we go. All right, well, thank you. Coronavirus.
All right, well, thank you guys for watching. The links that we had spoken about earlier, we'll make sure we get those in the description. And thank you for watching, sharing, commenting, and we love you guys. So, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.